Chapter 2170, Six-Dimensional String Solution. Boom! In Dongcheng District, the iron curtain in the sky shook violently, and the tremors in the city were strong. After the city had experienced an explosion, many buildings collapsed, and the buildings in the distance were also crumbling. There are more collapsed buildings now, and I don't know how many lizard men have been killed by the collapsed buildings. There was a chorus of wailing sounds, and Bang was shaking with anger. He immediately reported the situation here to the gatekeeper of the underworld and the top leaders of the empire. After hearing this news, the gatekeeper of the underworld's face became even gloomier. He didn't expect this to happen. Sixth generation, you are courting death.
He said this to Zhang Yi.
Maybe not, Zhang Yi said with a smile. You are the ones who don't know whether to live or die. Zheng Lu raised his hand, and a ball of black crazy energy condensed in his palm, and Su Tianming shot directly towards Zhang Yi. However, Sinluo Wanxiang protected Zhang Yi tightly, and it was not so easy for him to break through. However, Zheng Lu made a tiny movement with his left hand in the next moment, and this movement did not escape Zhang Yi's ability to predict the future. He saw that in the huge space formed by the binding chains, countless chains spread out from the constantly moving chains and shot towards the area where he was. Moreover, those chains ignored Zhang Yi's dimensional gate and went straight to his body. Soul Link, an attack method that ignores time and space and directly locks onto the target. Facing this attack, Zhang Yi also raised his finger. He put his fingers together like a sword and slashed through the air horizontally. All the black chains that were shot at him from all around were shattered silently in midair. When Zheng Lu saw this scene, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. He had never seen or heard of such ability before. It seems that he is far behind in terms of information about the guy in front of him and the entire Huashu kingdom. Zhang Yi looked at Zheng Lu in the distance, raised his fingers and pointed them at his body, as if plucking a non-existent string in the void, and quickly stroked it a few times.
Swish, swish,
swish. A sharp cutting sound was heard, and the indestructible armor of the Hades gatekeeper suddenly seemed to be cut by a sharp knife, leaving several deep scratches, almost tearing his armor apart. There was no sign or trajectory of attack, as if a transparent knife appeared out of thin air in front of him and was cutting his body. Zheng Lu was shocked. When he looked carefully, he saw a distortion of light and shadow in the space in front of him, as if an almost invisible gap had appeared in the space that carried the material world. The defense is really strong, Zhang Yi sighed. So, what about this? He stretched out his hands, pointed his 10 fingers in the direction of Zheng Lu, and began to move them quickly. Swish, 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 swish. It was as if a sickle weasel was flying at high speed in the void, and its sharp attacks were cutting Zheng Lu's body. The space was torn apart, and the tiny cracks were even difficult to see with the naked eye, but the power contained in them could tear apart any kind of matter in this world. If the Divine Realm Purification is a range attack within the space domain, then this move is a two-dimensional linear attack with stronger single-target killing capability. Crack. His sturdy armor finally cracked. It took a very sharp knife to cut through the pinnacle of the Wulwan Empire's military technology. Zheng Lu finally saw clearly how this move came about. It seemed as if a part of the space was pulled out, which happened to be in the direction of his body, so that part of the armor was also directly destroyed. In other words, Zhang Yi's attack was not aimed at his armor, but at the space where his body was. It wasn't just the armor that was broken. Zheng Lu felt a sharp pain in his chest, and green blood was actually flowing from his well-tempered body. My move is called Dimensional String Solution, and you are the first person to be struck by it. You should feel honored, Zhang Yi said with a smile, his fingers moving slightly, as if he was playing the piano. This move is a new ability that Zhang Yi developed under Ling's guidance. The basic building block of the material world is a one-dimensional string, which carries everything in the material world, including the sun, moon, stars, and the human body. If this string breaks, it will cause the collapse of space in a very small range, thus destroying everything in that space. Zheng Lu looked at the pieces of armor that had fallen off his body, and suddenly a magical feeling emerged in his heart. He was actually injured by a mere sixth-generation human. Although the cold and stinging feeling on his body could not cause him fatal injuries, this strange feeling and the bad news from the Wulwan Empire made him feel extremely uneasy. Abnormal, too abnormal. It was as if the other party knew them completely and was ready for any attack. Zhang Yi stared at Zhenglu's body and moved his finger slightly, but Zhenglu reacted and quickly pulled away. Crash. Dense chains filled the sky, blocking the two of them and strangling Zhang Yi. Crack. Crack. Zhang Yi's fingers swiped in the air, and the chains were instantly shattered. Zhenglu was retreating, his mind working rapidly. Due to the information gap between the two, he was at a disadvantage at the time, so his armor was actually cut by Zhang Yi. However, he is the most powerful military god of the Wulwan Empire after all, and he will not be discouraged by the short-term defeat in front of him. Instant attack, huh? There were a few bloody scars on his chest, but they had been completely repaired by his body's powerful healing ability. At this level, he can't be killed. Zheng Lu and Zhang Yi kept a greater distance between them, and Zhang Yi's fingers kept moving in the air. Crack. Crack. More and more armor on Zheng Lu's body was broken into pieces, falling down one by one, and was unable to effectively resist Zhang Yi's attack. But after the armor fell off, his body that seemed to be made of black gold was revealed. It is extremely majestic and covered with dense blue-black scales, which provides a stronger defense than the armor on the outside. After Zhang Yi tried several times, he found that it was extremely difficult for him to break through Zheng Lu's defense with his current ability. As expected, although I have obtained some of Ling's power, it does not belong to me. My understanding of spatial abilities is not enough. It's like a baby getting a pistol. Although it has deterrent power, it can't fully exert its power. Zhang Yi was not surprised by the situation. After all, the war has just begun, and he has prepared many means for Zhenglu. Chapter 2177 Knight's Battle. On the other hand, Zhenglu used his strong body to test the attack power of Zhang Yi's moves. Even if his body was cut apart by the dimensional string, he could heal himself at the fastest speed and could not be hurt at all. The physical fitness of lizard men is far stronger than that of humans, let alone Zhenglu. A large amount of resources of the entire Wulwan Empire are concentrated in him. There are no flaws in either attack or defense. He can be called a perfect war machine. Although I don't know how you obtained such powerful strength, I can see that you cannot fully control the power that does not belong to you. Then, let me show you how a truly powerful person fights. Zhenglu opened his arms, and a black ball of terrifying energy condensed in each hand. Zhang Yi concentrated his mind, and his second hand of time was always ready to predict the opponent's attack. However, what he saw was an unavoidable AoE attack, which would cover the entire space inside the binding chain. Zhang Yi saw the power of this move and actually shattered his dimensional door and then hit Ling's body hard. Zhang Yi's eyes became serious. Without any hesitation, he stretched out his hand and pulled out a long knife from Ling's back. The gatekeeper of the underworld threw two balls of light in his hands towards Zhang Yi, simply and unpretentiously, as if he was throwing two grenades. However, when the two balls of light collided with each other in midair, the explosive power made Zhang Yi's eyes look more serious. The combination of these two forces actually produced a special power that made him feel a stinging sensation in his eyes. The black light swept across the entire space, sharp as a knife, like a sky full of fine scalpels stabbing at the area where he was. Without any hesitation, Zhang Yi directly extracted the energy from Ling's body and slashed out with a knife. It is also simple and unpretentious, a release of energy. This sword was like splitting the sky apart. The night-level power formed a huge vacuum zone in front of Ling. This energy blocked the attack of the gatekeeper of the underworld and prevented his attack from falling on Zhang Yi. Such a terrifying sword light also caused a hint of fear to appear in the eyes of the gatekeeper of the underworld. This level of energy is actually higher than mine. It's a pity that it's just a weapon after all. In the hands of the weak, it can't show its true power. His eyes burned fiercely. If she falls into my hands, my strength will surely increase to an incredible level. I want to thank you, little devil of the 6th generation of humanity, for giving me a perfect weapon. Haha, you wish. Zhang Yi controlled Ling, holding the knife in both hands, and looked coldly at the gatekeeper of the underworld in the distance. Sure enough, this battle was more difficult than imagined. Ling, what on earth was that move he just used? Your ability index is clearly much higher than his, so how did he still break through my Sinlua Wanxiang? Zhang Yi asked Ling. This move was not in his intelligence. Obviously, those silver-armored generals had never seen Zheng Lu's true strength. Ling explained calmly, the supernatural power you mentioned is a manifestation of the power of the spiritual, that is, the power of longing. You must know that if you keep thinking about something, there will be a response. Extreme desire can bring about extreme abilities and characteristics. It's like a chopstick thrown by a master is more lethal than a flying knife thrown by an ordinary person. There is a gap between you and him. Zhang Yi suddenly understood after hearing this. No wonder. But I think it might be easier to understand if we compare it with a pebble and a shuriken. Ling replied, well, after all, I have to give a popular explanation based on your country's culture. This is also the reason why the Tsang Yuan clan ultimately failed, because all things come to an end, relying on the desires of this spiritual body. Only when you are at your utmost in emotion can you be at your utmost in things. It doesn't matter. Zhang Yi said calmly. It doesn't matter if it's not my own strength, as long as I can kill him. There won't be any accidents. Before he finished speaking, Zheng Lu was ready to kill him. Although you move very fast, as long as you are within a fixed range, your speed will be meaningless to me. Zheng Lu crossed his arms, and his iron-like muscles bulged on his sturdy body. A terrifying black light enveloped his entire body like black smoke. Although you are just a cunning and despicable ant, the fact that you have accomplished this is enough for me to remember you. Chaos, I am willing to call you by your name. But you will die by my hands. Zhang Yi smiled faintly and complained in his heart. Sorry, that's not my name either. But he didn't tell Zheng Lu because there was no need to disclose his personal information. Zheng Lu moved. In this huge space formed by countless chains entwined and intertwined, his speed was not much slower than Zhang Yi's. Considering this egg-shaped space, Zhang Yi would occupy a lot of space every time he traveled through space. In other words, as long as Zheng Lu occupies the central area of this space, Zhang Yi's speed advantage will become negligible. What's more, his method of attack is completely Su Tianming, that covers the entire area. Unity of thoughts. Zhang Yi saw Zheng Lu rushing towards him, but dodging was completely useless at this moment. That even more powerful explosive force could actually penetrate his dimensional gate and hit his body directly. Fortunately, Zhang Yi now has a new absolute defense. Your strength is indeed formidable, but I'm sorry, the human form I'm using is far superior to yours. How strong is Ling? It's hard to imagine. But even the humans who created the Epsilon classification would find it difficult to describe her using any one level. If I have to say it, it would probably be the illusory, symbolizing the unlimited supernatural power level, Omega. It's true that I can't beat you, but today I'm using the entire Huaxiu Kingdom's resources to fight you. Let's see who can hold on to the end. Zhang Yi said nothing, but just controlled Ling's human body, swung the sword with both hands, and slashed forward. The black light and the huge blue sword light collided fiercely in midair. The different energies annihilated each other, and the spreading shockwave destroyed a large number of binding chains. But this is just a drop in the bucket compared to the binding chains that cover the entire space. Zhang Yi held the knife, and Zheng Lu once again gathered the power of Su Tianming and prepared to attack Zhang Yi. However, at this moment, Zhang Yi suddenly opened the dimensional door, took out a huge silver box from it, and then used the long sword in his hand to pick it up and fly it into the air. Stay with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.